Right now, though, I want to turn our attention to what happened in the US yesterday, particularly Benjamin Netanyahu speaking to the US Congress and the protests outside. Let's talk about that with Fleur Hassan-Nahoum. She's an Israeli Foreign Ministry Special Envoy, and it was the former Deputy Mayor of Jerusalem. Good morning to you, Fleur.
Morning, Julia.
Thanks for joining us. I mean, first of all, your reaction to the news that obviously that Kamala Harris had another appointment, and the Vice President of the United States and the President couldn't be there when Netanyahu, elected Prime Minister of a very close ally, was addressing Congress. And numerous Democrats didn't turn up, and quite a lot of Republicans as well, to Congress yesterday for that speech. What does that tell you?
Well, I think it's a shame that there was a scheduling conflict that she couldn't deal with.
No, there wasn't.
Well, I'm being polite, Julia. This prevented her from being there when the elected Prime Minister of the only beacon of democracy in the Middle East, your main ally, the country that is actually holding back Islamic fundamentalism in the Middle East, and you can't make it to that. It's not a good start to your campaign, but maybe that was very deliberate. Maybe she's trying to bring back the more woke, lefty, radical elements of the Democratic Party who were angry with Joe Biden for not being anti-Israel enough.
Yeah.
And so it's a shame that she has to pander. And, Netanyahu spoke about the very toxic culture of protests in America with Islamists and with the Iranians and the Qataris funding this. And right outside his speech, you have exactly people burning the American flag. Yeah. Proving his point. That's what they were doing. They were proving his point.
And one man who actually picked up the American flag and ran away with it to try and stop it burning got chased down by people who go, get him. Again, just really, really unpleasant scenes. And in no way, to me, were these scenes people, feeling strongly about peace, for goodness sake. And again, I'd love to see these people protesting against Hamas at some point, given that Hamas is the reason why all of this is happening. But in terms of the relationship that US and Israel have, there's no doubt at all that Netanyahu was very keen to praise Donald Trump. He got a good chance of winning the presidency. He is very concerned about the amount of aid coming to the Middle East in the future to Israel to help them in the event. It's not just dealing with Hamas in Gaza or dealing with the Houthi rebels as well. We are talking about the incredible threat from Hezbollah in the north of the country, all funded, of course, and all armed by Iran. And the need that Israel has to know that America is going to be by their side.
Well, I think that Netanyahu made a very good argument for the fact that the enemy of the Islamic Republic of Iran, helped and abetted by Qatar, is not Israel. Israel is just the first stop on this tour of turning the world into an Islamic caliphate. So I think he made a good argument that, listen, guys, this is your war too. We're just on the front lines at this very moment. But they're going after the free world. They're going after civilization. And so helping us is helping you in the long term. And I think he made a very good argument for that. And I think he also appealed to the strong American sense of patriotism by comparing October 7th to some of the atrocities that happened in the United States.
Yeah, he was
by ISIS.
Yeah, basically saying, this was our 9/11, but I mean, however many times over, you look at the proportion of people killed,
exactly,
proportion of the population. He also called the protesters outside Iran's useful idiots.
Well, he's absolutely correct, because when you do any type of follow the money, a very basic rudimentary follow the money trace, you can see all these shell organizations that are essentially funded by Iran, by Qatar, and by many of these unsavory radical figures in the Middle East. And then, ironically, you got on the other side the moderate Sunni Arab countries like Saudi Arabia, like the UAE, who've kicked out Al Jazeera as a proxy of the Qatari ruler from their countries, who've been warning the West about Islamic fundamentalism. This isn't Israel warning. This is Arab Sunni moderate countries that have dealt with their own radicalization issues and have been warning the West about it. And the West hasn't been listening because, I don't know, political correctness, stupidity, ignorance, I don't know. But these protesters don't even know who's backing them, don't even know who's funding them. But Netanyahu made it a very good point.
But there's no doubt at all, Israel is losing the propaganda war internationally. You're losing it here in Britain. You are losing it certainly in the Middle East. I don't think you had any chance of winning it in the Middle East. Among the populations, many, as you know, many of the leaders of Muslim countries actually, want there to be peace. And I was just horrified by Hamas. And by the way, they aren't opening their borders, including Egypt, to the people of Gaza either. But you're certainly losing it in America. Israel's staunchest ally. When we had those attacks from the Iranians in response to, again, the tit for tat attacks, the Iron Dome, that is supplied and funded by American military might. It's absolutely vital to Israel's safety, is it not? Why do you think Israel is losing that propaganda war? Because, the Israeli government is a wily nation. You've got incredible military resources, got incredible special agent resources. How are you able to basically, lose this war when you have been the victims of the most horrific massacre only months ago, and yet the world seems now, certainly everyone under the age of 30 it would appear, seems to think that you are the ones in the wrong?
That's a great question, Julian. To me, a huge source of frustration. And I'll tell you what the bottom line is. The bottom line is that Israel has never had, or at least in the last few decades, a communication strategy that makes sense, or one at all. It's not something that Israel has invested its efforts in, and now we see the results. And then on the other hand, you see a very patient, long-term campaign by the Qataris and by the Islamic fundamentalists, and probably Russia and China have put in their influence in there, and they've been poisoning young minds through the university campuses for decades, and Israel hasn't even been in the arena. And people like myself in Israel, this is my frustration. I've been screaming about this, Julia, for 20 years. Why do we not have a strategy? And the problem in Israel is that the main way of doing business is putting out fires and not thinking strategically, because there's always something else to deal with. And this is something that we have to change. We have to actually get ourselves together. Like you say, we have fantastic communication mind in this country. Why can't the government just simply have a decent strategy? Many other countries around the world have one, and it works. We just have to put our minds to it. Yeah, indeed. Yeah, you need your very own version of Al Jazeera. I was amazed. I spoke to someone the other day who was saying that I said, you're just you're hearing very, very skewed news about this topic. You're watching the BBC. They said, no. They said, no, we watch Al Jazeera as well to get an independent viewpoint. And I just laughed out loud. Do you know who owns Al Jazeera? The people who are harbouring the men who have run Hamas. I mean, it's genuinely insane. Julia, I've got Arab friends who tell me how slanted and how biased Al Jazeera is the modern Goebbels. It spends all day propaganda of Jewish hatred. Well, they can just watch the BBC. They'll get plenty of that there as well. Fleur Hassan-Nahoum, really good to talk to you. Thank you very much. She's Israeli Foreign Ministry Special Envoy. And, I'll take people to task if I disagree with them. I really don't on this. Claire Pearsall, who's a former Conservative government advisor. I'm still amazed that Israel have managed to lose this propaganda war, because it is a battle for hearts and minds. And we are seeing the impact of, people on social media. And by the way, you can call me a Zio-hag and a genocide defender, even a perpetrator, I'm going to call. You can do it all day, every day. I don't care. I'm not going to change my mind. I know what's right and I know what's wrong. It absolutely is water off a duck's back. I do not care one iota. But you get these young, impressionable people at universities, largely badly informed. You get the politicians who are playing along. You've got you've got a strong, Muslim community in this country and in America, and you've got the wokes who think that Muslims are the most put upon people in the world in their little Olympics of victimhood, and therefore, you've got long-standing anti-Semitism. What a surprise! You end up in a situation where the people who've been the victim of a massacre are somehow the baddies.
I thought it was really interesting what Fleur said about a communications plan, the fact that Israel hasn't had one, has never thought it needed one, and the time has come where apparently they absolutely do. But I think that if you look at university students, as you were saying, young people in general, a bit of education in that region wouldn't go amiss. They don't understand it.
They really don't at all.